So welcome again to a Soundtrack of My Life, where we talk about how life is a mixtape, and as a person who hears music in his head the whole time, every moment of the day almost, the songs that go and infuse into my life and remind me all the stories and memories and different things. And last week, if you were here, we talked about Cholef Shivim V'Shalosh, a song that talked about after Yom Kippur War, basically the promises that were not fulfilled, promises of peace. But there was also a line there talking about how the elderlies said that they wish that these children who were just born will not have to serve in the IDF. So taken from that, this week we're going to talk about military service in general in Israel. I know we've been talking a lot about military in some way and the IDF in some way, in some capacity, in different aspects of it, and something that is just such an important part of life in Israel that I can just not ignore, and I keep going back to that because it's something that completely formed who I am today and a lot of people. So we're going to start by listening to a song. We're going to talk about that song as we always do, and from there we're going to talk a little bit about the culture of military service and how it impacts Israeli lives. As usual, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask questions, comments, anything that you want. It's an open discussion. Let's have fun with it. So let's start. And I hope you'd like this song.
ולא עושים שום דבר איזו מין שלווה ועוד שבוע עבר השבת בכלל אינה עוברת כבר קראנו את עיתון שרנו כבר שירי מגל וחרב כבר תפרנו את החור בגרב ופתרנו תשבצים בלי הרב איזו מין שלווה ולא עושים שום דבר איזו מין שלווה ועוד שבוע עבר אף מכתב ממך עוד לא הגיע עוד מעט המפקד יופיע תתחיל לוודאי שוב להבטיח תתחיל ודאי שוב להבטיח שקרוב לרגיל להגיע שניים ביציע תגנישו שניים ביציע
Okay, as usual, my question is, what is the story that this song tells you? When we talk about military service or anything from the lyrics, and also from the visuals in the video that I hope you were able to see. Deborah, please.
Well, I had the sense they were bored, that nothing's going on, and that they're waiting, and they're waiting for letters, and they haven't got their leave, and there's nothing apparently going on, so that they're just around the camp. And it's very peaceful, but they're bored.
Yep.
But I would say
Absolutely.
peaceful if you're in the IDF is much better than the alternative.
No doubt. No doubt. On the other hand, you're always waiting for, for the action because we're here to do something. But sometimes we just sit around and wait and don't do much. Yeah.
They'd
Thank
probably
you.
be prepared for quarantine.
Probably, yeah. It sounds like quarantining. Yeah, playing backgammon together, playing cards, sort of like what we do now. Yeah, then.
It's very nostalgic. This is like the kind of music my mom would listen to. And I mean, she's Israeli, so she was in the army. But the song, it just feels so 70s. You know how 70s movies just move so differently and much more slowly than movies you see today, and that's how this song moved for me. Like, it's just a very different pace and a very different feeling, I guess. But yeah, I agree with Deborah. They're all just kind of like, it reminded me of the movie Zero Motivation, which I forget what the title is in Hebrew because it's
Efes
not
B'Yachasei
Efes
Enosh.
Motivatia. Which one?
Efes B'Yachasei Enosh. It's
Okay.
more like zero in human
In
relations.
human resources, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How they're all the girls are just like playing computer games and
Yeah.
doing absolutely nothing and singing off key and
And I think it's very meaningful what you said about the rhythm of it or the pace of it that feels like I mean, the music itself is very mellow. And like we all said, they're bored. They're waiting for something. And the music really reflects that in such a way that nothing is happening with the music. It just stays like this the whole time. So I think really it does a great service to the lyrics. Yeah. It does a lot of great service to the lyrics that say the same thing. Yes, Joseph, please.
So is the whole thing about Shabbat with them? Because it just reminds me when you have a Shabbat, but you don't have Shabbat.
Yeah.
So you have everything that you don't do, but you don't have anything that you do. And that's like what a Shabbat evening with no taste. Well, there's not a Shabbat meal. There's just, you don't do anything. And I guess that's, what it's like when you get stuck with being in charge over Shabbat. There's hopefully not much going on.
Yep.
And certainly the pictures they showed were bored people.
Yeah, so absolutely, thank you for that. So there are a few elements in the song and the video itself. So the video is from 1978 from the movie Halehaka, the band. Some of you were here for the session that we had about military bands. This movie was all around that topic and the hype between around the military bands in the IDF way back. 1978 was also the year that they decided to disband all the military bands. But there are a lot of things here. First of all, when we talk about Shabbat, it's not necessarily Shabbat as we think about the services and everything. In the IDF, when you say I'm staying Shabbat or you have Shabbat, when someone did something wrong, sometimes it's a punishment. Sometimes you're on duty and you have to stay at the base. You have to stay on guard. What usually happens is during the week you have everyone around the base doing what they're supposed to do, and for the weekend only a few people stay, or a smaller amount of people stay, who are in charge of certain duties, who are on call for certain things, who are on guard guarding the gate or the armory or other places around the base. And usually, Shabbat is, as we say, it could be a punishment. I did something wrong, so I have to stay Shabbat, which means I have to stay the entire weekend and not go home. And the pace of a Shabbat at a base is very mellow. Granted, once again, this is 1978. Times have changed in the past. During Shabbat or even when I joined the IDF in 2001, we didn't have smartphones and you didn't have access to satellite TV or other things. So you would stay in the base and you'd play backgammon, you play cards with your friend, you maybe watch TV if there's an option of doing that, depending on where you're at and depending on your level. If you're in basic training, there's no way they're going to let you watch TV. But other things. So there's this whole story of that. Yes, talking about nothing, a lot happening, but also the video itself shows the relationship between the different soldiers. You can see the blonde one with the short hair looking at her friend singing, but then she's looking at this guy playing the keyboard, and you can see that there's some interest there. You can see the guy, the male and female who are making faces at each other, basically talking about showing us that while they're doing what they're supposed to do as a military band, which is sing, they're also interested in other things, and there's different dynamics within the group and social dynamics that are so important when we talk about the military service. And I talked about it before, and we'll talk about it today once again. But this is the movie Halakha became a huge hit the day that it came out, and still is one of the most important movies in Israeli cinema up until today, because it really reflects a lot of the time that when it came out, and a lot of the Israeli culture that revolves around the IDF. So we're going to, unless there are any more questions or comments before we move on, and this was our opening. Yes, Amy.
So
Hi.
Just to say, so I'm familiar with Yair Rosenblum from a liturgical place of the what we sing during Unatan Tokef, and the story about his writing of that V'kol Dmama Daka. You know what I'm talking about?
I have to say I don't, unfortunately. No, but I will look it up, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's a story about what is it? Kibbutz Hashita, I think, yeah?
Bet Hashita, yep.
Bet Hashita, okay, and that they had lost like 11 Chavrei Knesset, Chavrei Kibbutz in the, what would that be, 67?
I think so, might be, yeah. I think so.
67 war, and that, they were very secular kibbutz, and so, and it was,
no, it was 73, Yom Kippur
73,
War.
Yom Kippur War, yeah. So they lost, all these people in their kibbutz during, Dafka during Yom Kippur. So they had never really had a commemoration of Yom Kippur before, and now it was going to be all of these deaths. So they created a, like a little bit of a memorial ceremony that they would have. And then I think many years later, Yair Rosenblum, I don't know if he was visiting or if he became a member of the kibbutz there, and he learned about, about how they had suffered these losses and how they had been looking for some way to commemorate it, but they were not religious. And so, what they had done, and he wrote a beautiful piece from the Yom Kippur liturgy, which is, the sound of the great shofar is sounded, but there's still a quiet voice, and all of the angels are trembling. So that's actually, so I know of him as he was like the chief composer in the IDF or something?
He worked with, I don't know if chief composer, but he worked with different military bands and was definitely one of the main composers working with the bands, yes.
So it's interesting, this is like much more, secular connection, because I know of him from a different, I'm a rabbi, and I know of him through that story, and we use that part of his melody on Yom Kippur for that.
Beautiful.
It's kind of interesting other thread fitting in.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. I'll definitely look it up. You say Untanat Tokef, Yair Rosenblum. I will look that up. Thank you. So yeah, so this is our opening to talk a little bit about the culture of the IDF and how it impacts Israel. And as I said, it's with this movie, it's the scene that shows us the relationships and talks about how when we think about the IDF, usually people think about combat soldiers, you think about operations, you think about wars, but you don't think about everyday life when people are sitting in their army base and they have to guard the gate, or they sit and wait for something to happen. Yeah, that is actually the reality of most of the soldiers most of the time. Training, resting, guarding, waiting to be called to action, basically. Well, so yeah, we're talking about the IDF and how it impacts Israeli society. There's a saying, Am boneh tzava boneh am. The people make the army that makes the people. This is a sentence said by a general, Elazar Stern, who was the commander of the educational corps in the IDF. And he talked about how, we are the people's army, but it goes both ways. It's not just that, the people actually build the army, as the soldiers and all of that, and a lot of the culture in it, but the IDF has a lot of impact on the people in Israel in so many ways that we're going to talk about today. So I don't know if you can find me here in this photo from basic training. Can anyone guess?
The photographer?
No, no. I'm this young man right here in the middle. Yeah,
I couldn't unmute fast enough.
This little boy right here. And this photo for me is one of my most favorite photos from basic training. It's a lot of us together doing push-ups, and it's just one of those, I think it was the last day of basic training. And I look at this photo and I look at so many people that came together, and we all met at this army base, and I would never meet most of these guys anywhere else. I will say that this guy right here and this guy right here actually went to high school with me, and we ended up being in the same unit for 3 years in our service. But other people from all around Israel, from different layers of society, from different backgrounds, a lot of people that up until today are really close friends of mine that I would never meet anywhere else. There's Yechiel, for instance, is not in this photo. Yechiel, his real name is Avichai, but we call him Yechiel because he's a kibbutznik, and something about his mannerisms and everything, we decided that Yechiel fits him more. This name stuck to him in 2001. This is 2020, and I spoke to him last week, and when I called him, I said, Yechiel, how are you? Because that's the way it is. So he's from a kibbutz, but we also had, Amit from Nes Ziona, and we had Sagi from Herzliya. We had guys from Be'er Sheva, from all over, and from, once again, different backgrounds, social and economical backgrounds, different types of families, a lot of things. In my unit, we also had Druze and others. So there's such a mixture that brings people together, because when you grow up in a certain place, you're mostly surrounded by people that are more or less like you. But when you get to the IDF, everything mixes together, and the people really become the people that serve together. And the strong bonds that we create also become something that's hard to break a lot of times, with people that we would never meet or become friends with under any other circumstances sometimes. Yes, Sarah.
Shai, the ones that you knew from high school, did you become closer with them, or were you friends with them previously?
So this one, Matan, was in my own homeroom, and we were friendly, but we're not friends. And this guy over here actually went to school with me for 6 years. We knew each other. We said hello, but we were not friends, and we are still friends until today. I'm trying to organize a Zoom meeting with all of my army platoon from way back, because we didn't get to see each other for so long.
That's amazing.
Maybe that would be a good session for a class. You could bring your buddies to talk to us.
Perhaps, that could be a good idea. I'll write it down.
That would be cool.
Thank you. Another photo with other friends and different people. I stayed an extra year in my service, so I was in a position of an officer, even though I wasn't an officer. So I'm the only one here who's not an officer in this photo. No, excuse me. There's also my friend here, Osher, who also served 4 years with me. But once again, people that I'm still in touch with, most of them till today. Never would have had the chance to get to know them otherwise and work together and impact each other's lives so much. And there is, of course, reserve duty, which is something that is so unique, I think. This is a part of my platoon from reserve. Some of these guys, like the guy right next to me, Shmulik, who served with me from day one in our service, and other guys, we just became a close family. And coming from all over Israel, once again, we come together a few times a year, and we work together, and we create these wonderful bonds, and we get to enrich each other in so many ways. And that is, the connection a little bit to the social thing that we saw in the background in the video about the different relationships that the soldiers have with each other. So that is the people that make the army. I wanted to start by showing the people who made my army service so great. But when we talk about the people, you can see the blue and we can see the orange. Blue is those who are right now in service, and orange is the reserve power, reserve duty manpower. And actually only 30% of the IDF, if now let's say we're going to war and everyone is enlisted, only 30% of the people serving during that time are actually in active service, and 70% are reserve duty, which is a tremendous amount. So most of the people that make the army are the people of Israel, who are not necessarily everyday uniform wearing people, but we are a part of this army, and we create the strong military that we know as the IDF. But when we look at the reserve duty and a little bit of the information about that, so we talked about how 70% of the IDF is reserve duty, but actually only 6% of the population that might serve in reserve actually do serve in reserve. The blue is the entire population of Israel and the potential, and this here is 6% of the people that actually serve in reserve duty, and that is because some units don't need the support of the reserve people, so they just let them go. It could be for other reasons that they cannot serve for any reason that might be. For women, it's a bit different. Women are not obligated to serve on reserve duty in some positions, in others they are. But once a woman becomes a mother, then she is exempt from reserve duty. Out of all the population in Israel, only 1.5%, okay, only 1.5% of the population actually serve in active duty up to 20 days every 3 years. That means that this many people actually train and come back to train and serve, coming from what we call the ezrachut, from civil life, to the IDF to put on the uniform and serve on reserve duty. So let's talk about the IDF, and we all know, I think we all know that it's a mandatory service. But if we look at the years, the state of Israel was founded in 1948, and the IDF became established completely in 1949, where mandatory service for men was 2 years and 1 year for women. Later on, they added 6 months both to men and women in 1952. In 1968, they added 6 more months, meaning men would serve 3 years, women would serve 2 years. In 2015, they decided to drop it a little bit. So men would serve 32 months and women would serve 2 years. And now, starting this July, they lowered it to 2.5 years for men and kept it at 2 years for women, and still looking into the balance and to see. I do have to say that some women do serve for the full amount that men serve, depending on the role. If they are in a combat unit or any equivalent serving side to side with men, they would serve the same amount of time, like my specific unit, where the female soldiers have to serve exactly like we do.
Yeah, or if they're an officer.
Or if they're an officer, that's a whole different story. If you become an officer, you have to initially sign for an extra year of duty. So that means that if, let's say, men served 3 years, they would serve 4. If women served for 2 years, they would serve for 3. And you can also, I wasn't an officer, but I was offered to stay in an officer's position for an extra year, and I could have had a military career not being an officer, but being an equivalent of that, continuing on for many, many years, as a lot of people do. This is a nice photo, you know, that that I found that talks about, that shows us, you know, the day that you become a soldier, you put on your uniform. And I want to ask you, you know, a child goes to school, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, and eventually, you know, one of our goals is to be a productive adult that has a great career. Here in the States, what would be the course? What would be the choices during, you know, school years in order to make sure that I, as an adult, will eventually have the job I want, to be successful and all that?
Generally, I think takes place in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be a few choices before then, but my impression, at least, I mean, I'm talking about when I was a kid, but I haven't heard about any huge changes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, you know, just different tracks for depending on how advanced people are. But I guess
a lot of
you should answer, Sarah.
a lot of extracurricular activities for those
Like
who
what?
want to go in. So like some people, like I did mock trial, other people would do a drama club or, you know, a play. Some people would do art. I did art as well. It just depended on what your passions were.
Yes, that word, extracurricular activities. You know, you need to show a great record to get into a great university, right? The more you do, the better your options are, and you need to show who you are for that. Correct?
Yes. So playing soccer, all these things too.
Yeah. So the more I do, the more involved I am with my surroundings and with social activities or contributing to my high school and my community. My options to get it to a better university in order to have a better starting point for my career. Am I right?
In theory, yes.
In theory, everything's generalized and in theory, but you have that. Once you get to the university you want, I know I've heard, you know, that a lot of people would want to go to the university that, you know, their parents' alma mater or something like that. There's such a strong pride of your university, right? There's a spirit, university, school spirit, and all that. Well, that doesn't exist too much in Israel, I have to say. I mean, I went to Hebrew U, and if you would wear a Hebrew U sweatshirt, that means that either you're a tourist or really, really weird, I have to say. So that's one of those. But in Israel, we go to school, and we know that at the age of 18, we're going to go to the army. So what are our options? Yes, we go and we have after school programs. I did martial arts and I did arts and different things. But when you get to high school, you have to choose a track of studies beyond the basic thing, beyond math and English and Hebrew and literature and Bible and history and all those things. You have to choose a specific track. And a lot of people, you know, if here in the States, you would choose that track according to your passion and what would get you to the best university. In Israel, a lot of times, not always, you would choose a track that is your passion, but also you might choose a track that will open a door for you to your military service, okay? So that means I chose to study Arabic in high school. One of the thoughts behind it, besides the fact that I was interested in it, was this is going to open a door for me to go and serve in intelligence in the IDF. Others would choose maybe to study computer science in high school. It will allow them to go into a position as a program, a coding position or something like that in the army, but that will also maybe open some doors for you in the future, because if you served in any sort of like computer science position in the IDF, you might have options when you leave, when you're done with your service, to go to a company that deals with it. It opens a lot of doors, a lot of connections. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people use networking from universities, right? When they're done, trying to find other alumni from the university, from their own university, to make their way into the workforce, the business world, or any other kind. In Israel, it works a lot like that with the military. If you know someone that is an alumni of your unit, that might be a leverage for you to get into their company, or they can assist you in so many ways. So networking with the IDF is really strong. And I also wanted to bring this photo because this is a Purim costume of an IDF soldier, which is also something that is very frequent for kids in Israel. So those tracks, those tracks of life that are parallel but not really similar between here, the States, and Israel are very different. Similar in a way that we are looking for a future in that way, but in a very, very, very different way. And usually we served for, let's say, 3 years. I served for 4 years. I got discharged when I was 21 and a half. No, sorry, 22 and a half. And then usually we don't go straight into the university or college. We work a little bit to save money, and we travel the world maybe, and we do so many other things because we're confined to the system for so long that we want to try other things. A lot of times, not everyone, but a lot of times people want to try new things before they commit to start their real lives with school and then work.
I have to say, I have always been so jealous of how just acceptable, socially acceptable it is to have that downtime. Because in America, that doesn't exist. You go to high school, then you go to college, then you get a job, then it's just boom, boom, boom. You have no time to explore. Like, and I've always been really jealous that in Israel that's just normal. Like you have like a year, 2 years, 3 years to just do whatever you want. Like work a little, travel, like.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in sociology, it's called a moratorium time, that you have no obligations for society, towards society, and children have that. Even when you're a student, even here in the States, people view you as you're a student. Your role now is to study,
Yeah.
take care of yourself before you contribute to society. In Israel, we were kids and we were in school, and then we contribute to society in such a way that takes such a toll on you with the military service that is beyond so many things that it's acceptable in such a way, because people feel the need to kick back and we're going to talk about the transition from being a teenager to being a soldier in a minute. Okay, so recruitment. Finished with high school, right? But even before that, around the age of 17, you have the first warrant, Tzav Rishon, which means you go to military offices and they interview you to know who you are, what do, what is your family like, also trying to see if you have any special issues in terms of socioeconomical status, or any personal issues, maybe mental issues or anything else. You take some tests. It could be with linguistic skills or mathematics or others, and you have a physical examination. All those create two things. One is your kaba, kvutzat ichut, your quality group, and there are different levels to which you belong. It has to do with where you come from. It has to do with your potential. It has to do with your abilities and skills. And the other thing is your medical profile, that has to do with the physical examination. If you have a 21 profile, number 21, that means that you cannot serve. You're disqualified from serving the IDF, but you can still volunteer if you want. And if someone volunteers, that means that they have to serve for 2.5 years, or maybe 2 now, with all the changes. But once you volunteer, you cannot say, oh, I've been here for 6 months, I don't like it, I want to go, and they just let you go. So there's 21, there's 24, profile 24, that says that right now you cannot enlist, but they will review your medical status in a while to see maybe you will be able to serve. And there are different numbers: 72, 74, 82, 97 is the highest medical profile, that means that you're in tip-top shape and you can go into any unit. Mostly those go into the elite units and combat units. So yes, Joseph.
Why 97 of all numbers?
It's a good question. There is a myth. It is a myth. I don't know. I've never really got the real answer, but there's a myth that for Jews in Israel, you automatically lose 3 points from the perfect 100 due to circumcision. I don't know if it's true or not. That's a myth, but that's a number. I really don't
Well,
know.
that would only be true of a portion of the population.
Sorry.
That wouldn't be true of all the soldiers.
Exactly. I really don't know why those calculations are the way they are. I never really got an answer to that, and there are only stories and myths behind that.
Okay,
for me, I have to admit. So then after you've been evaluated, they say, okay, so this is your medical profile. This is your quality group you belong to. These are your skills. This is what you think you might be able to do in the IDF. And they send you a list of different options. If it's combat units, if your profile allows this, if it's intelligence units, it's different things. And they say, this is what we think you'd be fit to serve in. What are your priorities? You're not necessarily going to get those priorities, but they will allow it. And then the next stage is tests and gibushim. Gibush, the word gibush in Hebrew means, getting people, bringing people together, to get them almost as one. Comes from the word gavish, crystal, to crystallize them together, to make them into one thing. So gibush is a physical endurance test. When you come, depends to which unit. It could be 1 day, 2 days, 5 days that you go, and they put you through a military style hazing sometimes and different things to see how well you deal with the stress and pressure, but also physically how you deal with all of this, how you deal with things socially, to see if you're fit to go into the different units, especially for the special units. And you might have different tests for different units. If we mentioned intelligence force or anything that has to do with technology, they want to test you and see your skills and potential to study and to learn the skills and all of that. And then you get your placements. Most people know where they're going to before they join the IDF. A lot of people just join in, and the day that they come to the army base, they tell them, you're going to be in infantry, you're going to be in armored corps or anything like that. And after the placement, you usually know that before, you should know that almost 2 months before you actually enlist. And then olim al madim, wear the uniform. But before that, in between the time that you actually enlist, there are different things that happen in Israel, in Israeli society. What we see here is from a program of preparation to the IDF. A lot of teenagers go through programs through youth movement or through their schools and others, preparing you for basic training. That's a lot of working out. That's a lot of running and push-ups and everything like that, just to prepare you physically for that. But a lot of those also bringing people to talk to the students about the mental stress that could be in the IDF, about different things that might encounter. It changes from one place to another, but there are a lot of programs like this. There are other options also. Let's say you want to contribute to society before you join the IDF. You can take a gap year and have a year of service, Shnat Sherut, if you know the Shinshin program, maybe in some of the communities here. But basically, a gap year between your high school service and your military service, where you just go and volunteer with society. It could be with schools or other things, depending on where you are. It could be through youth movements or other programs. Another option is Mechina Ktam Tzvait. It's a pre-military school in a way. You're in a boarding school, not really boarding school, but with a small group of your peers. And it's an opportunity for a year to volunteer, learn how to navigate, learn a lot of skills for the IDF, but also prepare yourself and learn about Israel and Judaism and about the society. So when you go into your military service, you're more mature, you might have experienced responsibilities within the group you lived with, and other things to enrich yourself. So those who take that gap year, it doesn't take off their whatever time of service, let's say 2.5 years of service, it adds onto it. So if I did one of those and I was supposed to serve for 2.5 years, I did the gap year plus 2.5 years. So those are also options that happen, and a lot of teens choose to go and volunteer and study and do more for society and grow as individuals between that year in that year between high school and their military service. And then you enlist, your family takes you to the army base where what we call the Bakum, Bsis Klita U'Miyun, the absorption base, where they take you in and you go through Shelsheret Chiyul, a chain of induction, where they give you a few shots for vaccines, for different things. They take your photo and give you your soldier ID. They take your fingerprints. They take x-rays of your teeth and different things. You get your dog tag and you get your uniform, and then you become a soldier. And it's this weird transition. I can tell you that a lot of people, come over there with long hair or just cut their hair the day before they join in. Usually a few days before that, you have an enlistment party where all your friends and family celebrate the day that you're about to enlist. So it's a big transition. Yes, Joseph?
How do you say dog tag in Hebrew?
Diskit. It comes from the word disc. It's a small disc, diskit. And you have one for your neck that is made out of two parts that have like creases between them, so you can break if needed. Let's say, unfortunately, someone was found dead somewhere, so they can break half of it so they would know who that person is if they need to identify anywhere in the battlefield. But you also have those for your shoes. In each shoe, you have a small diskit with your full name and your soldier ID number. That is different than your regular ID number. This is a photo of people of young men just wore their uniform for the first time. It's very, very awkward. You need to learn how to tie the military shoes right and everything. It's so weird. You're so proud to wear a uniform a lot of times, but it's also very weird. But the transition from civilian to soldier it could also be traumatic. You're going from an individual, most cases, that like we said before, all you have to take care of usually is yourself. And now everything you do is for the greater good. The things that you do during your service, you don't have a choice a lot of times to do them, and no one asks you if you want to do them. You get, you're given orders, and things are done for the greater good and not just for yourself. The fact that you want one thing doesn't matter really. Going from an individual to a part of a system, a hierarchy that you're not used to. You cannot call your commanders in basic training by their name. And you see in the movies and everything, it's yes sir, no arguing. I remember when my commander allowed me to do something in basic training, I said thank you. He said don't thank me, and we were not allowed to thank them for things because they were obligated to give us certain things, so we shouldn't thank them for that. So there's a weird system there, and you're going into the system. I remember in basic training, I had no idea. I didn't realize for a long time that we actually had a schedule with things, because things just you go from one place to another without really realizing what's going on. Full control of you, and you have no control at the beginning. And going from a very liberal life where you can do whatever you want. I had 2 earrings in before I joined the IDF. I had to take them out. You can't wear certain things. You can't wear jewelry. You can't do this. You can't do that. You lose a lot of your independence in that. So it's a serious transition. We're talking about people that make the army, that makes the people. We talked about people coming together. There's a lot of socialization that the IDF does in different ways. One of them, this unit here, is Mechve Alon, Center of Education and Studies, that actually brings in different populations before they start their actual service to learn more and to increase their abilities. We're talking about people who are olim, that might need some support with their Hebrew before they join different units. We talk about special populations. It could be with special needs or coming from harder life, and allowing them the chance, sometimes have some adjustment issues, allowing them the chance to become a part of the system, but they need a smoother transition and an extra step for that, so they give that. There is a conversion track. If someone joins the IDF and he or she are not Jewish, then you have an option to go through a conversion in the IDF if you wish to do so. Also, if you didn't graduate with a high school diploma, you have an opportunity to complete it during your service. So the IDF really tries to give people opportunities to move on in life, and not just into the service, but also give them the skills to have a great service and move on and succeed in their lives. Another option is Atuda, which is like ROTC, if you know, here in the States, Reserve Officers Training Track, where you go to school first and you study. It could be economics, or it could be studying to be a doctor or a lawyer, or so many things. The state and the IDF pay for your studies, and then you become an officer. Once you join, you go through officers training, and you become an officer, and you're committed to a longer time to the system in order for them to use those skills that yet they invested in you. So you might serve for an extra year, 2, 3, 5, depending on what you studied and what is the mandatory piece for that one. So there's also this option that also allows people to go and study. If they have the potential to do so, you need to be accepted to it in a special way. And one last thing there is the Foundation for Discharged Soldiers. There's a whole branch for this, taking care of soldiers who have been discharged and helping with the transition back to civilian life with a grant that you get once you are done with your military service, that you can use either to open a business or to study or to do different things to give you a good start for your civilian life. But they also support you with information about paying taxes and how do I deal with civilian life and stuff like that, really trying to make this transition smooth, since we were in high school, we never got to experience real life. We were in the army for a while, and now we have to be grown-ups and adults without really knowing how to deal with everything around us. And the military paycheck doesn't pay a lot, so you also need that head start. You also might have grants for studies and different things. So the IDF really supports the soldiers and brings a lot to them in order to make it a better society in Israel. Another important input is the I forgot the home. I think it's called the Home Front unit, Pikud Oref, basically saying we cannot just focus on all the fronts around us. We also need to focus in Israel. So what would happen if, let's say, there's a war now and there might be rockets flying into Israel? Who's going to support those families that might need to be evacuated from their homes? Who's going to take care of any buildings that have been collapsed? Who's going to take care of explaining to different people in society how to wear a gas mask if they need? So Home Front Command or branch are those who do that. And this is a photo from COVID-19 time where they actually go and help people in need with food and other things. So the IDF also puts a lot of effort into Israeli society in a way to contribute to the safety of the civilians and to the welfare of the civilians in a lot of ways. So now we're going to talk a little bit, we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to talk a little bit about women in the IDF. These are old photos. It's declared that women will be enlisted to the IDF, join, and women have been a part of the underground movements before the IDF from day one, and also other units around with the British Army during World War II and others, and women have been enlisted into the IDF from day one. This is a cute video that I want to show you about the shift in uniform, female uniform throughout the decades. I'm going to narrate what it says. 7 decades of uniform. The first decade, it was cotton, khaki colored, and it was a long skirt and the pockets. The shoes were short shoes, also older shoes after over the year. And you had that hat instead of the beret that we have today. For the winter, there was these coats made out of wool. You can see on the collar there are 2 pins with the IDF. You can also add the size. In the 60s, the skirt got shorter. The shirts only had 1 pocket on one side. And the beret, the wool beret, was softer. You could wear only 1 ring to be wedding ring. In the 70s, they changed it to dacron uniform. You get a cape coming from the word yarech, thigh, a shirt that goes down to your thigh, shorter skirt, only black shoes, and the soft beret was replaced with the boat beret that you see here only for women and had the soft one. You could also wear 1 chain and only earrings that are clip-on, or like close to the ear, not hoops or anything damaged. No more these old winter clothes. You would have the military sweater. By the way, up until then, you had to wear the beret on your head at all times. Then it was canceled. The khaki uniform was replaced with olive-colored uniform. You had the military sweater, which was terrible, terrible. And a heavy, heavy coat if needed. And once again replacing that beret to a wool beret just like the pants one. We'll see more and more female soldiers wearing military shoes like men. In the early 2010, no more skin feet, no more that longer shirt, and only the tucked-in shirt for a female. So that's just a cute video that shows that evolution of female uniform. And I want to tell you a little bit about Ellis Miller. Ellis Miller was born in 1972 in South Africa, and she made Aliyah when she was a little girl. And she was in Atuda, in that ROTC program, and she studied aerodynamics and flight at the Technion. And she also, because she came from South Africa, she went to South Africa to get a civil flight license, and she wanted to become a pilot. But they told her that because she was a woman, she couldn't. So in 1994, she appealed to the court and started this whole movement to see if women could serve as pilots and in other positions that were reserved only for men. And that actually made a difference. So these days we can see female soldiers in combat units, in the armored corps. We can see in mixed units, men and women. We can see them as pilots, and we can also see them as officers on battleships. This is Ol down here in the corner. Ol is a shlicha in Rhode Island, and she was the first commander of a specific kind of ship. She was not the first naval officer, female naval officer, but she was the first one in this specific position. She's a great pride. But we can see the transition that was made, that started in 1994 with Ellis Miller, that went to the court to say it is unjust and unfair for women to not have those opportunities to become pilots or anything that they might want to be during their army service. Just like at the beginning when I talked about the movie Halahaka from 1978, so many movies and TV shows were made that have to do with the IDF. The IDF is such a strong part of our culture that you can see these are only some examples from different years. Yarden mentioned Efes B'Yachasei Enosh, Zero Motivation is right here. And also, these ones that talk about, some of them are comedies, some of them are dramatic, talk about the different wars or just serving in the IDF and talking and bringing so much into Israeli culture that is quite crazy. And another thing is the music that is affected by by that so many songs, and we know, we have the songs for Yom HaZikaron and others, but the IDF is a part of everything. And the last thing we're going to see is how it infiltrated some of our language in a way. So one of the things we do in the army is make things shorter, right? We make terms shorter. So make up a lot of new words. So we're going to take a look at this list that I made of a few words that made it out of the IDF, and I still use them, and a lot of people use them in everyday life. So lehit afetz means to nod off, right? When you start kind of pecking, starting to fall asleep. Lehit afetz, it comes from the words ayafut tzva'it, military tiredness. You're so tired as a soldier that whenever you sit down, you start nodding off and falling asleep. So that's lehit afetz. Shiftzur, shipur tzura, making something look better. Okay, the berets that you saw that were on the shoulder are very thick. Usually soldiers take them, we shave them, we iron them, we make them look nicer. And so as we take our rifle and we put accessories on it to make it look nicer, but also to adjust it for better functions. If we have our vests, we have to leshavtzer, we need to cover some stuff or tighten some stuff and tie them together for better functioning. Chapshan. Chapshan is a word that describes someone who's not pulling his weight in a lot of ways, or someone who's super lazy. It comes from the words chayal pashut, a simple soldier. Some of the soldiers have a responsibility for something. It could be to be a sniper, or it could be to be a commander of your squad or anything like that. But if you don't have a special responsibility, you're a chayal pashut. And the word chapshan comes from that, saying, you don't take responsibility, you don't pull your weight in a way. Medugam comes from the word degem or dugma, which is exemplary, which means perfect appearance. So let's say a soldier is fully dressed as should be. He is medugam, he or she. But it could also mean that I bought a new laptop that has this amazing processor and this great storage and everything about it is so great. It's medugam. It's like tip-top shape. It's amazing. It's perfect appearance. She'elat kit bag. Kit bag comes from kit bag. This is the bag that soldiers used to get when they would come, and they would get the uniform in it and all their equipment, and you would carry it. And that is when you're a new soldier, when you're just arriving in basic training. So when your commander would say, okay, guys, you have 1 minute to run over to that shed and come back. And someone would ask, wait, do we have to wear our helmet on while we do that? And then the commander said, you know what? Yes, you will. This is called she'elat kitbag. It's a stupid question that might get you in trouble. If that soldier would not ask that the commander would not make him do that. So that is she'elat kitbag. And we use it for everything. You might be at the workplace and your boss says, you should do this and this, and says, oh, do you want it by tomorrow? I said, sure, why not? That's she'elat kitbag. You get yourself in trouble. Baltam comes from bilti metuchnan. It's an acronym, an unplanned event that surprises you, usually used in the IDF, but we use it for everything in life now. Liftoch sha'on. That means open your watch. So the commander would say, you have 30 seconds to run to this shed and back. Liftoch sha'on. Make sure you have the time. Go. So we use it also now outside of the military for certain things. And leyasher kav. When I come and I say, okay, we talked about this and that, I just want to leyasher kav. I just want to straighten the line. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. This comes from actually physically straightening the line of the people standing together in the shooting range, because you have to stand in one straight line to make sure that no one's accidentally shooting another person. So that comes from that. So we use all these terms in everyday life, and they come from the IDF and from our military service. And that is, it's already past 3, but that was our program for today.